it's actually a three-way problem. People still consume them in country. There's poor law enforcement, so there's no consequence for doing that. And then there's still the demand from Asia. So it's actually a very complex problem to tackle. And then there's a fourth component. There's also deforestation going on in many African countries, especially here in Central Africa. A lot of deforestation, so their habitat gets destroyed as well. So if you want to save pangolins, you have to tackle those four problems, and preferably at once.
Welcome back to an exciting episode of this podcast. But unfortunately, today we are going to talk about the most trafficked animal in the world, the pangolins. Welcome our guest Julie Vanassche, who's back again with her deep passion to talk about these remarkable creatures. This podcast is an infolin, which means it has all the information that you need to know about the pangolins. Throughout the podcast, we delve into various aspects about the pangolins, including their situation in Cameroon, the captive breeding efforts, the radio tracking done to study their behavior in the wild, their relation with COVID-19, and obviously, we cannot forget the elephant in the room, the illegal wildlife trade that poses a significant threat to these animals. By the end of the podcast, I must admit that I felt a bit somber. Considering the current fleet of pangolins, it raises concerns whether we'll be able to witness this beauty in the wild in a few decades. But in the face of adversity, I encourage each and every one of you to remain hopeful and educate yourselves about pangolins because that's the first step you can take to conserving these majestic creatures. Let's unite together to conserve pangolins and create a better future for them. So, Julie
Yeah,
Vanessa,
sure.
ma'am, first of all, thank you so much for coming to the podcast yet again. So, first of all, it's an honor to have you again. So, thank you so much for that.
No worries. Thank you for the invitation. Yeah, the light will come on in a minute.
No worries, no worries. So, before I start, it's been long since I've talked to you. It's been a year or so. So, how are you,
Yes,
first of all? How's everything in Cameroon going on?
everything is going really well. So yes, I moved from Liberia to Cameroon, but I'm still rescuing pangolins.
So, I didn't ask you this last time, but what attracted you towards pangolin? Like, there are a lot of animals in the animal kingdom. So, why only pangolins?
Well, it happened by accident. My first pangolin, I saw my first pangolin in Liberia, and yeah, they're very special and unique animals, and it's very, very interesting to work with them. There's not much known about pangolins, and so yeah, that's why I was very interested in working with them. They're very special and unique creatures, and if you've worked with pangolins, it's unlike any other animal I've worked with before.
So, before we dive deep into the conversation, it would be great if you can explain everyone what is a pangolin because I feel that many people don't know what a pangolin is, and if they know, they are very much confused. They confused it with an armadillo. So, what is a pangolin?
Yes, so a pangolin is a mammal. A lot of people think that it's a reptile, but it's actually a mammal. And it's the only mammal completely covered in scales. There are 8 species, 4 in Asia and 4 in Africa, and all species are threatened with extinction. They don't have teeth. They eat ants and termites, and when they feel threatened, they roll into a ball. And the scales actually protect the pangolin from other animals trying to bite them. And some species live in the trees, and some species live on the ground.
And I feel that every animal has their particular role in the ecosystem, like be it a grasshopper or be it one of the big cats. So, what role do pangolins play in the ecosystem?
Well, pangolins, they are the gardeners of the forest. And so basically, they eat ants and termites, and they keep populations of ants and termites under control. Because if there weren't pangolins to eat them, ants and termites would take over and would actually destroy the forest. So pangolins keep ant and termite populations to an optimum level. but also pangolins dig in the soil looking for those ants and termites, and that's how they aerate the soil. They make sure that the soil is ventilated, and that also promotes crops and plants and trees to grow.
Cool. So, like previously, you have worked in Liberia, and now you're working in Cameroon. So, what difference have you seen in the pangolins from Liberia to Cameroon, particularly in terms of the illegal wildlife trade? Like, is the situation better in Cameroon or is it worse than in Liberia?
The situation is actually worse in Cameroon than it was in Liberia because uh, because pangolins are not only consumed in Cameroon locally, there's also an international trade in scales as well. So in Asia, there is the Chinese traditional medicine where people believe that pangolin scales can cure all kinds of illnesses. But this is not true because pangolin scales are made of keratin, just like your hair and your fingernails. So it doesn't cure anything at all. But a lot of pangolins have been killed because of that in Asia. And because those Asian species are almost extinct, people are now coming to Africa and take the African pangolins and then ship the scales to Asia. So in Cameroon, pangolins are not only consumed locally, there's also the trade towards Asia. And that's one part. And then the second part is that the pangolins that come into care are often very, very injured and more injured than in Liberia. So here in Cameroon, there's lots of snare trapping. It causes a lot of fractures in tails. It causes severe injuries. The pangolins that come into care here in Cameroon are very, very, very injured compared to the pangolins that I had in Liberia.
So, another thing like last time we talked about was breeding pangolins in captivity and using the radio tracking mechanism to basically track their activity in the wild. So, I've been reading that in a few places, in a few zoos as well. The captive breeding has been successful. Obviously, it's a tedious task because it requires a lot of resources. So, from the past 1 or 2 years, has Cameroon made any progress in terms of radio tracking as well as breeding pangolins in captivity?
Actually, no. In both, no. So first of all, when it comes to breeding pangolins, it is very, very difficult to do that. That's one. It's very, so pangolins are very easily stressed and they don't do well in captivity. They easily die in captivity, and that's why we have the protocol of releasing them as soon as possible, just because their survival rate in captivity is poor. But second, there is no breeding pangolins is not the solution, because you can never breed so many pangolins to meet the demand for Asia. So it's just it's physically not possible. And three, it's kind of it's the world upside down. It's kind of giving into the trade. It's kind of giving into this false belief that scales can cure illnesses. Scales don't cure illnesses, so why give in to that belief? So there's absolutely no reason why we should start breeding pangolins. We should just leave them in the forest and let them be. And then when it comes to radio tracking, we are in the process of developing a tracking system, but it's not easy to put a tracker on a white-bellied pangolin or a black-bellied pangolin, because they live in the trees, so the transmitter cannot hinder them while they climb the trees. Their scales are very thin and fragile. It might harm the animal. You know, it's not easy to build something for these species, but there are already existing trackers for Temming's ground pangolin. And so the Tikkihywood Foundation has already done a lot of research using trackers on that species.
So, a topic that I really wanted to talk to you about was the effects of COVID-19. So, I feel that we'll break it down into two parts. The first one can be the illegal wildlife trade, and the second one, what I heard was initially that pangolins were considered the reason of the pandemic. So, the first one is that what were the impacts of the pandemic on the illegal wildlife trade? Because I have been reading that it led to both positive as well as negative impact. So you working on the ground, what's the ground reality? Like what has been the impact of the pandemic?
Well, at first, I think people were a little. Well, nobody knew where the virus came from, so I think there was a bit of a halt in the trade at first, but the trade just continued. I mean, it's the same as I can speak for Liberia. It's the same with Ebola. So when the Ebola virus came up in Liberia, everybody suddenly stopped eating bushmeat. But then when the virus was under control, the trade just continued. I mean, people just started eating bushmeat again just as much as they did before. So I don't think it had a big effect on the trade at all. Pangolins are still being killed every day here in Cameroon.
Yeah, even I feel like I was reading that in China, the demand might have reduced a bit, but the illegal wildlife traffickers have found a new way. So I was reading that they have used social media as a marketplace to basically like sell all the pangolin scales, because it has become very easy for them. Just by scanning a QR code, they can take all the payment, and they can easily ship out the pangolin scales. I was reading that the pangolin meat was tagged as basically beef and chicken, and it was like trafficked illegally to China. So I feel that both views are there. Some since still feel that we should be consuming bushmeat, and some have become apprehensive of consuming it. But yeah, I feel that in the short run it obviously led to like the reduction in bushmeat, but in the long run still people are consuming it, and those who have become jobless are hunting bushmeat now. So some weight has increased, and obviously
Yeah.
some weight is ready to fall as well. So, but another
Yeah.
important aspect I read about was that initially it was felt that pangolin was an intermediate cause about for COVID-19, because it was found that the coronavirus found in pangolins shares genetic similarities with the like CoV-SAR2 and SARS-CoV-2, which was a virus that led to coronavirus. So I would love to ask you that how, like, given the zoonotic potential of coronavirus, including responsible for the COVID-19, what role do pangolins play in discussions about disease transmission?
Well, yeah, I mean, they're still doing research on where it actually came from, but the bigger question is, it doesn't really matter. I mean, this year or in 2020 it was the coronavirus, but then we've also had SARS, and then we've also had it doesn't really matter what virus, what animal caused what virus. The bigger problem is that we will have more of these pandemics if we continue to consume bushmeat, and if animals are continued to being slaughtered in these wet markets where all these species come together. Um, this is actually what is the important message. It doesn't really matter which animal is responsible for what virus. Just stop consuming bushmeat altogether. Just stop the wet markets, and then these pandemics cannot occur. But it's because these species are slaughtered on the same table. So many species are slaughtered in the same place in very unhygienic circumstances. That's where viruses jump, and that's where viruses start to mutate. So that's the problem. That's what we should be worrying about.
But look, why do you think in the first place bushmeat is consumed? Because we understand that bushmeat is sold because local communities need to earn something for their survival. But why are people consuming bushmeat? Like, is it traditions, or there are some genuine medical like benefits of bushmeat?
Well, so yes, people are consuming bushmeat because of tradition and because of taste preference and its culture, which I understand. But, for example, according to Cameroonian law, animals are classified into Class A, Class B, and Class C species. So Class A species are animals that are fully protected. You cannot hunt them, kill them, sell them, eat them, trap them. You cannot do anything with them. And that's pangolin, that's pangolin, chimpanzee, gorilla, the highly endangered animals, that's class A. Then class B is that you can only, they also have some level of protection, but with the right permits, you can consume them. And then class C animals are actually animals. There's still plenty of those. They're not protected. They're not endangered. People can still consume those species. And so basically, in an ideal world, nobody eats bushmeat. But the reality is that that's very difficult to eradicate. So I think it would already be a great step in the right direction if people wanted to consume bushmeat, that they chose class B or class C species. And I understand if people live in the bush, there's no supermarket, people need to eat, people have families to feed. I get it. But then I think it would be beneficial or a good step in the right direction if class B or C species were consumed and not the class A species, so that at least they have some time to recover and that the population can increase again.
So talking about the pandemic, like, did the pandemic hamper any conservation efforts that you guys have been taking in Cameroon?
Oh, I mean, I came here in Cameroon after the pandemic, so I don't have exact. I cannot really compare before or after the pandemic, but I think everyone in Cameroon protecting pangolins here or doing awareness on pangolins. I think the message is still the same before or after the pandemic. Just preserve them as much as you can because they're almost extinct.
Right. So a question that I last asked you last time as well that was left unanswered was that how can we go hand in hand with development and conservation? Like, just to reframe it, like, how do you maintain a balance between wildlife conservation as well as improving the lifestyle of the socioeconomic conditions of the local communities as well?
I think it comes down to proper regulation, um, proper regulation of the consumption of animals. So like I said, no class A species, but only class C species, so species that are not endangered. That would be a good step. Then law enforcement. So if that regulation is not being followed, that there's at least law enforcement. And yeah, just awareness. People need to understand that some certain animals are not going to be here forever, and if we want them to be here forever, we just need to change our ways and stop consuming them. So I think there is a way for people and animals to coexist, but I think it has to come with rules and regulations and law enforcement and awareness.
Right. So, there's a saying that I'll very loosely translate to says that we need to save, in order to save the wildlife of an area, we need to save the people first. So I feel that here
Yes, of
education
course.
plays a very important role, and later on, independent organizations need to collaborate with the government to improve the situation of the local communities. So I would love to ask that how the Tikkihywood Foundation is improving the situation of the people in Cameroon, how the education work is being done.
Yeah, so I agree with you. If you want to help animals, you have to help the people first. And it's very simple for someone to just come into Cameroon and say, you cannot do this and you cannot do that. You have to provide an alternative. So I agree with that completely. So I haven't been in Cameroon long enough to actually, provide to set up a program for alternative livelihoods yet. But we are doing a lot of awareness, and we have been doing we've been on the radio, we've been on the television, we hand out flyers, we work with the government, we ask the government to hand out flyers, we go to schools, we spread the word as much as we can. And then also we let the government spread the word as much as they can, because it's better if it comes from their own government than from us. It's their country, it's their wildlife. So We just provide the government with everything they need to do to spread awareness and to provide education.
So like how do you interact with the local communities who are by profession hunters and gatherers? How do you work with those guys?
Yeah, the moment is just through awareness and just talking to them, learning from them, seeing or trying to learn from them why they consume certain species and why they don't, and then trying to come up with a plan where both humans and animals can benefit. But like I said, for now, since we've been here, we've been so focused. We've only been here for a year and a half, and so we've been so focused on rescue, rehabilitation, and release. Of course, we've been doing awareness, and we're trying to help the local communities as much as we can. Our minders, our pangolin minders, come from the local community. So, we try to help the local community as much as possible. But I think we need to be here a little longer to actually increase that.
So like what's the rehabilitation process for a pangolin you have just rescued from a wildlife trafficking area? So like can you walk us through the exact steps how rehabilitate a pangolin?
Yeah, it's not easy. So every pangolin is different. They all have their different personalities. So there's no set rule on, or there's no set handbook on how to rehabilitate the pangolin. It's basically, of course, when they're injured, they get medical treatment. So we have a vet on site. When they're injured, they get treated. But most of all, our biggest job is to make sure that they don't have any stress. So when they come here, they have gone to hell and back. They are injured, they're in pain, they're stressed, they've been kicked, they've been handled rough, they've been put in a bag, they've been, they've been abused. So by the time they come here with us, they are in a terrible state of mind. So basically what we do is we just offer them some water, and then we just let them sleep a little, recover. If they need treatment, they get treatment. And then we make sure that they eat. So they eat ants and termites. We make sure that they gain weight. We weigh them on a daily basis. We just monitor their health daily. And as soon as they get the okay from the vet, we plan the release. Some pangolins stay with us for as little as a week, and others stay with us for more than a year. If they're babies, we need to hand rear them. It takes more than a year. So it really depends on from pangolin to pangolin. Some stay long, some don't stay long.
So like
Depends.
what's the nature of the pangolins? Do they bond with the whoever is taking care of them, or are they like very chill animals and they don't usually bond with the caretakers?
No, they do. So it doesn't mean that the pangolins in our care become tame, because they don't. They're wild animals, and they will stay wild for as long as they are with us. But pangolins are very, very intelligent, and they do, after a while, they do know our scent, and they are smart enough to realize that we won't harm them. And
Hmm.
so the more we work with them, the more they know our scent, and the more they relax. And they sometimes they don't even roll into a ball anymore when they smell our presence. So yes, they do bond with us, but it doesn't mean that they're tame. It's not a pet. Pangolins are not pets. They shouldn't be pets. They will never be pets. It's a wild animal, but they are very, very intelligent, and they do know good people from bad people, so to speak.
So another question that just came into my mind was that as soon as pangolins feel threatened, they curl up into a ball, and the scales are not very hard, but hard enough for most of the predators to not able to penetrate into it. So what makes pangolin? But for humans, they are an easy target. So what makes pangolin such an easy target for humans?
Well, exactly that, because they roll into a ball. Pangolins don't put up a fight. I mean, You cannot just catch a bear or a lion. The lion will defend itself. The lion will try and bite you and claw you and will actually attack you. A pangolin doesn't attack. A pangolin will roll into a ball, and they don't even have teeth, so they cannot even bite you. So basically, when they roll into a ball, this is the best defense they have against other wild animals, but it's the worst defense they have against humans, because we can just pick them up and put them in a bag. So the way they are designed and the way they have evolved is perfect for nature, but it's a nightmare against people. It does nothing against people, unfortunately. I wish they attacked.
So, like earlier, as the director of Libassa Wildlife Sanctuary in Liberia, now working with the Tikkihywood Foundation, how do you see the similarities and differences in the pangolin conservation challenges between the two countries? Like, is it same? Are the challenges same, or are the challenges different now?
The challenges are the same. The challenges are the same because we battle the same problems. Pangolins are consumed in both countries. We also we also have to work with the governments, and we also have to mobilize the government to take necessary actions. It's actually the same. There's also multiple NGOs in both countries raising awareness for pangolins, and then what we do, the rescue, rehab, and the release. It's very similar. It's very similar.
So, to know your views, like you have been working for pangolins for a considerable period of time, and before you as well, there have been a lot of organizations and individuals working for the same cause, right? So, what do you feel is still lacking in the whole scenario? That still the pangolin numbers are declining drastically. Like, is there any problem from our side that we are not able to protect them, or is there any other issue? Because it has to work in some way or the other, because it has been decades that people are working for these creatures. So why is it not working out still?
That's a good question. Well, first of all, there's still the demand. Well, actually, there's three components. So first of all, people don't know that pangolins are protected. Not only that it's a CITES 1 animal, so they're globally protected. So a lot of people are not aware of that. That's one. Two, poor law enforcement in many African countries. There's unfortunately a lot of corruption going on, and there's poor law enforcement. That's two. And then three, there's still a demand for scales in Asia. So as long as we don't tackle the demand in Asia, people will still come to Africa and source pangolins to transport to Asia. So it's actually a three-way problem. People still consume them in country. There's poor law enforcement, so there's no consequence for doing that. And then there's still the demand from Asia. So it's actually a very complex problem to tackle. And then there's a fourth component. There's also deforestation going on in many African countries, especially here in Central Africa. A lot of deforestation, so their habitat gets destroyed as well. So if you want to save pangolins, you have to tackle those four problems, and preferably at once.
So do you feel like is the problem being sorted out? Because I feel that most of the people who are working in this, they are aware of these four problems. So do you feel that we are moving towards a better tomorrow working on these problems, or are these problems worsening day by day?
There's always people working on these problems, but the thing is, these problems are so complex to solve, and Africa is such a huge country, and the range states of where pangolins live. I mean, there's pangolins occur in so many countries. Yeah, there are organizations trying to tackle the problem, but it's so huge, and on such a huge international level, it will take years for that to be solved. But unfortunately, I don't think we have that time anymore. I really feel like we are heading towards pangolins going extinct, and that's the problem. It all takes too much time. time that we don't have at the moment.
I feel like what we were talking about the illegal wildlife trade earlier as well. I feel that with the boom of the social media, it has become the network of the wildlife traffickers had become more diverse because it has become easier for them to communicate to wider range of customers and exporting all the like illegal wildlife trade material. So I feel that it has
Mhm.
worsened the situation. I guess the government should be tackling this situation as well. And as we were saying that the government needs to collaborate with independent organizations and the livelihood of the people needs to be improved first before we can save any animal. So
Yeah, exactly.
if I had to ask you like three biggest threats you feel that pangolins are facing today, will be those three threats?
Yeah, so the demand for scales in Asia, the daily consumption of pangolin meat in country, and I would say deforestation as well. Those three,
So like
and also the fact that there's no consequence for doing these things.
right. So like just a suggestion from you, like the hunters and gatherers who have been like killing animals using their meat and selling it across using their scales, for the elephants using their ivories to earn money, what alternate like job opportunities they can go for or the government can promote so that they can depend on alternate livelihoods and leave all this bushmeat trade and the illegal stuff away.
Well, actually, a good option would be to go into farming. For example, pigs, goats, cattle, chickens, rabbits. There's even a rodent here in Africa. They call it the cane rat. I mean, those are animals that, especially the rodents, they reproduce fairly easy in captivity, and that would be a good alternative. And also a lot of agriculture. So Cameroon and has very it has everything it needs for agriculture. It's just agriculture and growing livestock um, takes a lot of investment, and it takes some money to get started, and then by the time your animals reproduce, it takes time. So that's why taking animals from the bush is the easy option. It's the easy option, the cheap option. You just grab a pangolin from the bush and you've got dinner tonight. No effort, no investment. So that's why it's done. So I really think that people need to understand that if you cannot keep taking from the forest. At one point, it ends. It's not a bottomless pit full of animals that will always be there till the end of time. It's very well documented that all these species will be extinct if we keep taking them from the forest. So I really think that there needs to be an education program for alternatives to bushmeat, like growing cattle or rodents or yeah.
So like what are the different programs that the Tikkihywood Foundation is running to conserve pangolins as well as other like class A animals as well?
So basically, we are helping the government to protect their animals and spread the word on protecting them.
Right. So, like, how can individuals around the world contribute to the pangolin efforts in Cameroon and support the work of the Tikkihywood Foundation?
Um, well, mainly by sharing the word and by spreading awareness and by on a global level. The world is a village. Social media, I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, just you know, people need to be, first of all, people need to be aware that these animals exist, because not a lot of people know that pangolins exist. So if you don't know they exist, you cannot help them. So I think, first of all, there needs to be a global awareness on what is a pangolin and why is it almost extinct. And so that would be a great help for us to, spread our message, and then maybe put pressure on the governments and put pressure on pretty much everybody involved in the illegal wildlife trade. I mean, for example, airports need to do more checkups on what's going in and out of the country. Travel responsibly. Don't bring animal body parts as a souvenir. Don't buy souvenirs in ivory or whatever. Just be a responsible tourist. But I would definitely say spread the message, spread the word, spread the message. That would already be a great help.
So, like you mentioned that in Cameroon, obviously the pangolins are protected. Obviously, they're protected as a species in the entire world, but Cameroon as well. So, and if I had to ask you, like, is pangolin still served as a delicacy in Cameroon openly, or have are people more aware now that obviously it is a protected species, though they cannot openly sell out pangolins?
No, we're still at the beginning of everything. So pangolins are still very, very openly sold everywhere in Cameroon. Sometimes I see them myself, pangolins that are hanging on the side of the road, still alive, openly sold. Or we see signboards in restaurants, pangolin soup for sale. It's very, very in the open. So we are at the very beginning of things, and still a lot needs to happen before people are aware that it's actually a protected species and it shouldn't be sold at all.
So, like, since we are nearing the end of the episode, the last question I would love to ask you was a last message from you to anyone who's listening to this podcast, a person who might have like lost any hope that we are going to save these animals, and on the other hand, we are working recklessly to save these animals. So, what's going to be your last message for those people?
I think there is definitely hope. I think we can, and it's not just for pangolins, it's for all species that are facing extinction. There's definitely hope. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing this. I could be at home in Belgium. So there's definitely hope. But it's it will take everybody to work together, and it will really take it will it's on the governments, the governments of those countries to step forward and to take charge and take control of their natural heritage. If we can achieve that on a global scale, I'm pretty sure there's hope, and I'm very sure that we can save the species. But it's a long road. It's a difficult road, but it's definitely not an impossible road.
I feel that the sad part is that sad and ironical as well that an animal who, like in the animal kingdom, the pangolins are known as the symbol of hope on one side, and on the other side, they are the ones that might be going extinct maybe in a decade or so.
Yeah,
So like that's sad to
yeah.
see. So what like how do you think that the government should be going throughout it? Like if anyone from the government officials is watching this, what would you say to them? How can a government play an important integral role in basically protecting the species?
Well, basically, Cameroon has some very good wildlife laws. It's just they just have to be enforced. That's it. They just have to be enforced. That's all. That's what the government needs to do, and raising awareness, educating people, and yeah, that's the role of the government. The laws are there. The laws are existing, so they just need to implement them.
That was like a good podcast, I have to say, like because even seeing the pangolins there, all their like population declining so fast, it hurts because it is a magnificent animal, like one of its kind. So it really hurts
Yes,
like
very
the way
unique.
their population is declining day by day. And I feel that many people are aware about the bushmeat trade as well. It's just that what they have developed over the years, it has become a habit, and obviously it is going to take a decade or so to break a habit because traditions cannot be broken in a day or so. It takes time. So I really hope that we move
Yeah,
towards a better tomorrow.
yeah, same. Yeah, you're right. It takes time. It takes time. So let's hope we still have that time. And but yeah, you're right. You're right. Let's hope this species doesn't go extinct, because it's not only an iconic animal, it's not only a unique animal. Just like all animals, it's a necessary animal for the ecosystem. And not just that, just like any other animal, it has every right to be here, just like everybody else. Just like you and me, pangolins also have a right to be here. It's not fair that we just take them from the forest to extinction. They don't deserve that. So just for that, just that they have the right to be here, just for that, we should leave them alone.
Thank you so much, Fam, for being on the podcast. It was a really inspirational
Thank
one.
you for
Thank you so much.
thank you for the invitation. I always enjoy talking to you.
Thank you. Hope you enjoyed this conversation. And if you did, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share. Also, thank you so much for showing so much love on my previous episodes. I'll be back with another episode with another expert next week.